is our opportunity to find out more when George, excuse me, when Adam arrives. But until he is able to come in, he may be on one of those important calls where he's just like, oh, torn between two different things. So I just really want to thank both of you right now, Ani and George, for literally getting out your sculpting tools and carving out this hour. Do either of you know that you need to leave before the end of the hour?
I'm a cop and lawyer and a professor, so who knows? But I don't think so.
Nope, I'm all good.
Wow.
That's why
Wow.
I usually can
But
only meet after 4 p.m., but I wanted to make it to.
oh my goodness. Have you always been that way, George? Have you always had
Man,
three balls in the air?
I always wanted to add a passion for helping victims of crime. So if I had to sacrifice my life to help other people, I had no problem doing it. But this kind of Parkinson's awareness, just I got pulled into it. I didn't want to be in it. It's the kind of thing that you meet people and you become. I'll talk, when we get in, but people become family. But it's the worst, type of way to meet or reason.
Yes, yes. Boy, I tell you, when those advertisements come on and say, people say, you may have seen this one, people say the worst words you can ever hear is, you've got cancer. Well, they're wrong. It's your child has cancer. That sort of thing where I'm just going, absolutely. That sacrifice, that why not me? Why it's Steve, I want to say good morning to you. He's calling in from Atlanta. We've got Los Angeles. We've got the southern end near Miami, Florida. And then, of course, Oregon going on here. And Steve has two things going on. Steve, you are welcome to put the links to what you've got going on and what you're starting at. But one of them that I always remember readily is that he's creating a hub of resources that a person can go to who in the same situation is going, where is help? Is there anything that I can do to make my loved one more comfortable? Is there something? Is there support? I'm feeling overwhelmed. I just need to talk to people about my grief. And there are so many wonderful resources that just are beneath the surface that we don't know about until we all work together to elevate that. And George, you are doing that.
Yeah.
You actually you okay. You said that you've done 120 conversations, interviews recently?
Yeah, I mean, I want to thank you and your viewers for letting me have this opportunity, and Annie as well. It's an honor to meet you. And again, I kind of feel after this hour we'll all be like family because we're all on a journey together. Unfortunately, mine again, my mother passed away due to Parkinson's disease 3 years ago. Feels like it reoccurs every single day since she's passed. And I actually started a website together for Sharon.com, kind of just to remember her and for myself. And maybe I thought a few people might also remember, what we went through. And my goal is that no other family or person ever has to continue to go through this. But kind of went viral. I had even Willie Geist from NBC's wife wore a band. This is actually the band. I don't know if you can see it, but we made these bands and we send them around the
Oh
country.
yeah.
Just as Parkinson's disease awareness and a hope for a cure. My mother's name's on the inside. I'll have to mail both of you. We don't charge. We send them. Kind of got out of hand 3 years ago because I was paying a ton of money, but I wanted to reach the whole world. So that kind of calmed down, thankfully, and I decided we still have the website. It's kind of there, but it wasn't really alive because if you have a website and you're not doing much with it, it's just there. So what better way? I noticed there's something called the World Parkinson's Congress, and they actually meet every few years around. And this year was in Barcelona, Spain. I couldn't make it. I had my own medical issues, but I couldn't believe it opened my eyes that this is a disease that's actually affecting people around the world. So now it left just the U.S. in my life, but it's really kind of depressing, but havoc around the world. And it was so it was held in Barcelona, Spain. But the nice thing is that through social media, like we are today, I was able to meet and talk to like probably 1,000 people that were there, and just made a lot of contacts. It's not easy because this is all just be by me. It's just myself, and I was able to. And now in only 2 months, I was able to interview about 160 people, and I just did it to try and get awareness for other people. I don't make any money from any of this. I do it all fully volunteer. I don't accept donations. If anyone donates, it goes to one of the major organizations like the American Parkinson's Disease Association. But again, my biggest sadness in this all is when I was going through it, which you two will discuss. I had no one to talk to, no one to support me. I felt alone, and I just feel that there's still not a lot of awareness in South Florida. We might have a walk or two a year, but that's not going to work. We even had a walk for the Parkinson's Foundation. I was so excited. Had a little table. We're going to hand out bracelets, and it's really touching to meet other individuals. But a tornado came, and I was standing there, and they canceled the whole thing. So we've had very rare events. They do have like one or two things through a university, FAU, and they have a ballet which has for Parkinson's, the Boca Raton Ballet. But it's not. I wish I could do this kind of full time and be out there with the community and be with individuals just so that they know that we love them. And even though I'm a stranger to them, that there are people like us who care. But my biggest problem right now, still after 3 years, is that there's just not enough awareness.
There are hearts that are beating in rhythm with you right now, going, there was no one there. I didn't know that there was support. I didn't know there were resources. I didn't know that someone could come alongside and say, I'm mad. I'm so angry about what's taking my loved one, what's gripping them. It's just, oh my goodness, to hear this. And George, you opened 2 doors to Ani right now, who I just met. I mean, just 2 days ago or something. And she said, absolutely, I'm in. And one door is that you felt, why isn't there more awareness? Why isn't there something that will reach out to others? And this is absolutely part of you grieving and loving your mom. And so Ani does something on her own, or, she's going to describe it more. And also that you said you couldn't make it to Barcelona because of your own medical situation. And so, Ani, if it's a medical situation, whatever percent of the time, that includes pain. And so my ears perked up when I heard about her, or listened to what she was saying on a LinkedIn meetup. And I tried to connect her with people that maybe she didn't know yet, and the Oregon Pain Science Alliance, daughter of the president, et cetera. So, Ani, what is it that you've been doing for about 30 years? And also, pain. What a field to get into. I don't know if it fell into your lap or it had to do with something in your background. I really don't know. So go ahead and tell us.
Well, thanks. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. And before I forget, George, I want to mention, are you familiar with the Parkinson's Resource Network? I think it's a website that they have all these resources available to people with Parkinson's, different alternative therapies and things. And I think they are, I don't know if you're familiar with Alignable platform, but they are active there and you can find them there, but you can check out. And once I stop talking, I'm going to try to pull up the link of their site. And I think that would be a good resource for you also. But
thanks.
I'm Ani Papazian, and for the last almost 3 decades, I've been working with people that have been told their body pain is normal for their age, or living with pain has become their new norm. And the reason I got into this industry purely being frustrated because no one should ever learn to live with pain. And there are resources, there are solutions. You just, if you're someone or you know someone that's been living with it, they just haven't found one yet. And so the way I work with people is my background, my bachelor's is in kinesiology, but I'm also a licensed medical massage practitioner, functional nutritionist, and I do advanced translational nutrigenomics. And as George, you were talking about Parkinson's disease, it's so interesting when we do genetic testing and looking at the different pathways, the brain pathway, or at the cellular level, your detoxification, oxidative stress, inflammation, all those things, we can see what steps you should take if you do have certain genes, combination of genes that could be potential for you to get some type of diseases, let's say Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, what steps you can take so those genes will never turn on. And that's the passion that I have. And no, I didn't get into this industry because of my personal journey. I got into it because of a pure frustration that the solutions exist. Don't stop looking for them. Just because you tried a couple of things and they didn't work, keep looking. So,
Oh,
that's where my
goodness.
passion comes from.
Ani, there's more to hear from you. Hello, Adam. I am so glad that you came in. And you are muted, just so you know. I think you're muted because you're just being polite.
I am muted. There we go. Thank you. I apologize for being a minute late here. I was having some technical challenges. It just happens.
It just does, technically and literally and virtually and figuratively and really. I am just so glad that all three of you are on the screen. Now, Ani, 3 or 4 different things going on with kinesiology and nutrition and geonomics. Say it for me, Ani.
Nutrigenomics.
Nutrigenomics, and not letting those things that are part of you that make you turn on and possibly turn against you as far as pain or what's causing the pain. My goodness. And for 3 decades you've been doing this. And yes, the frustration, this, I love that you started with people shouldn't learn to live with their pain. There's solutions. It's like, oh, people are listening and jumping up and down. It's like, there's more solutions. Okay, plane ticket to Los Angeles. Boom. So I'm going to go visit Ani. Adam, when I hear clatch, I think of a coffee clatch. And I see in my mind a group of people around a small table. They're just all lifting their cups and they just want to talk to each other and enjoy each other. And you are against something, and that is loneliness and isolation. Yay, we're with you. We've got our picket signs ready to be against loneliness. That's a horrible thing. And you're saying it's preventable and curable with Clatch. Tell us more about you and what you do.
Sure. Well, thank you for having us. So first of all, I would start off by saying loneliness is a normal experience that we all go through. And it's a signal from the body. It's called an aversive signal. You can think of it like hunger. And it's telling you to do something, which is to connect socially. And this is, as it turns out, an important part of our needs in the same way that food is an important part of what we need. We need socialization. And different people need different levels of socialization. That's normal and fine too. But it's this healthy signal from the brain that is a good thing. The problem becomes when we don't respond to that signal and we become what we would call persistently or chronically lonely. And we now know from the last 30 years of research that this is a problem that severely impacts a person's health. You've seen all the, probably, or read the data about being equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day and increasing stroke by 32% and coronary heart disease by 28%, and doubling your risk of receiving a dementia diagnosis. So you're going to live, if you're lonely regularly, you're going to live about 5.5 years less than your non-lonely neighbors. And so the problem is loneliness is complicated. People become lonely for different reasons. And they can be because they lost someone, of course, but they also can be because of a loss of identity. So you retire, or you have a mobility issue, you don't feel like yourself. And these things tend to happen in as we age, because as we get older, we lose people in our lives, we retire, maybe we move, and we lose our social network. And there's a lot of stigma traditionally associated with loneliness, especially for men. It's viewed as a weakness. And so loneliness will very often mean that people won't admit to that loneliness. And I'd say the last thing about this that's important to know is that it changes your behavior in the same way that you can think about being hangry. So if any of us have ever been angry, that's an aversive signal from the brain changing your personality. But in the case of loneliness, it actually creates what we call the habits of loneliness. These are self-protective, self-centered behaviors. When they do functional MRI studies of lonely people and they show them other human faces, they will see those faces as threatening. So it creates hypervigilance, which in the modern world really prevents you from connecting or pushing away those very people that you want to connect with when you become persistently lonely. So Klotz developed a new way of measuring loneliness and a way to understand the specifics of your loneliness, not through a questionnaire or self-reporting, but by using what's called psycholinguistic markers from friendly phone calls. So we have a friendly call with you, and from those calls we can extract a lot of information to understand the very specific nature of an individual's loneliness, how lonely they are, how much they're at risk of being persistently lonely, and to describe the personal sort of elements of their loneliness so that we can start to apply appropriate and more effective solutions. So that was a lot. I hope that wasn't too much, but that's what we're doing.
Oh my goodness. And I agree with Ravi Joseph Koda, who is himself an innovator and a developer. And dare I say, he's approaching a startup, looking for funding for his own invention. He was on our show. He was courageous enough to come on the show, and he talked about a person who is making a difference in other lives, certainly aging lives. And he was just boosting him. I had to send messages to that guy going, wow, Robbie's your number one fan. You might want to send him a thank you note. But I agree with him. He is learning something new every time aspects of aging comes up on the screen. And that aversive and that loneliness is complicated. You can't just say, maybe I'm lonely, or you sound lonely, or, emotions, of course, are complicated. And to dig down, why did that person have that eruption, and digging down and finding out that they were hurt, they were frightened. You were saying that being lonely seems weak. So a person continues to suffer from it and withdrawing, if I can even throw that word out. Don't take my word for it. Take Adam's.
Yeah.
Because of an aversion to being seen as weak or feeling weak, which just makes it worse. I mean, the whole thing is just, oh my
It's
goodness.
paradoxical, right?
Yeah.
You want connection, and yet the behaviors that you exhibit land up pushing people away. I watched, there's a great film called All the Lonely People, and they were, one of the professionals in the field was describing her mother, who would invite people to the house because she really wanted to have tea with them and connect. And then all she would do when she got there is complain about all her problems. This is what we would call classic loneliness behaviors. Like as soon as I see that, I know that person is a lonely person. And so you want the connection, but you're pushing it away at the same time in terms of what you're doing. And it's not easily within your control. It's like hunger. When you eat, those bad behaviors of being hangry go away. With loneliness, when you find meaningful connection, which is more about trust and someone you can share with and hear their issues and respond to it. So we call it the sorrows and celebrations of your life. That's really what cures that loneliness, just like eating something cures the hangriness.
Yes, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I have a question for Adam, because it kind of hits home for me what you're saying, because my mom, my father passed away a couple of years ago, and my mom, my dad was the socialite. He would connect with people. He was just the lively, he loved life. And people really loved him. He was more positive person. My mom is kind of opposite. She never was the social person. Everything was through my dad. So now she lives by herself. And between me and my sister, we try to visit her once or twice a week. We have someone that visits her, spend some time with her 2 days a week. And then I try to call her like literally 4 to 6 times a day just to talk to her. But how would you, and we do offer her, like there are organizations, in Los Angeles where there's, if you want Armenian, there's Armenian organizations, there's Russian organizations, even though she does speak English. But if you feel more comfortable in a community that you're more, you can connect and talk. But she's just like, no, that's for old people. Like, Mom, you're 79, you're there, like, go. But she wouldn't. And it's frustrating for us. Like, okay, I have a business to run. I'm busy. My sister has working full time and she has a family. How do we deal with that? And she's not the most positive person, I have to say.
So a couple of things there. So we always distinguish, first of all, between what's called social isolation. That's the objective state of being alone, and loneliness, which is the difference between the level of connections you have in your life and the desired level of connections you want. So somebody who's more introverted might need less connections to be satisfied. Someone who's extroverted, even though they have a lot of connections, might not be satisfied. And it's not about being around people. It's about finding those meaningful connections that make you feel connected. By the way, sometimes those connections are what we call weak ties, or it's the hot dog salesman person you see on the corner, it's the doorman you see coming into your building that give you a connection and make you feel connected. The behaviors you're describing are absolutely classic loneliness behaviors. And people don't want to think of their identity as being either not independent or not youthful. No matter what you see looking back at you in the mirror, we all think of ourselves as young, believe it or not. And when you stop doing that, that can be a cause for loneliness. So that's one piece. So of course, the specific activities and the way that they're presented in society as the senior centers and things, a lot of people, especially among the baby boomers, they really don't want to go there. And it just makes them feel less like themselves, not more. So I would encourage people, first of all, to respond to that by, first of all, go with the person to the events that they're going to, find events that they like that aren't targeted necessarily at older adults, but are more about things that the person might like to do. And then messaging really matters. So how you talk to somebody in this situation, which is difficult, so a lot of our work is how do you do this right now, is you really have to be, it's more about being present with the person, making them feel seen and heard, than about the specific activity you're doing. So it's living through the discomfort of the behavior that they're having and not reacting to it, and being present for them and making them feel that you're focused on them. And that's more likely to bring them back to connection. I don't know if that's helpful.
It is. It is. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. George, we started with you. And even before we got on screen, because I did peek at just a few things ahead of time, so I'm not just walking in going, now, what is it that you're selling? Because George isn't selling anything. I realized that a book that I created because I was influenced by my husband to take a newsletter that I wrote and create a booklet out of it so that it could go farther than people who subscribe to a LinkedIn newsletter. I realized, oh my goodness, George is adding more to the paperback book, which we haven't pressed submit yet for it to be a publication. And it will be my very first. I'm 63 and I am writing my first book that I'm going to actually hold in my hands, as opposed to, view on a screen. And you just added not a chapter, but a set of practical bullet points that, because the book is about grieving and multiple griefs and multiple levels of grief and multiple ways that grieving come at a person, and it's difficult to recognize, and an action that they can take, a physical, do something like this, do it your way, but do something like this and make it work to serve you as you continue to grieve. And you just did it. You had your responses and reactions to doing the journey of being the loving son of a woman who was stricken, unfairly targeted by Parkinson's. And you just took it, and now there's wristbands. You've been in group settings. You've tried to do something that got kiboshed by a tornado. There's so little being done, and you're missing your mom and the feelings that you had about your mom. And you even said that it was 3 years ago, but it's still there, and it's still there, and tomorrow morning it's still going to be there. And you took it and you're acting upon it, and you're giving people a chance to go, blah. I mean, you're 160 people that you have interviewed. And I'm just thanking you right now that you are one person doing one thing that is, even in what you're doing today, what you've said already today, you are making a positive impact, or giving somebody a nod, going, yes, he understands, he gets it. I'm still upset about something that happened before now, but it's affecting now because it took her from interacting with the grandkids, and it took her away from our family. And Oh my goodness. I'm so thankful to you, George. Is there something else that you wanted to expand upon that you talked about at the beginning of the hour?
Thank you. I appreciate the nice words. A lot of my speeches or talk is from the caregiver's perspective. Unfortunately, is often left out because we're so concentrated on the individual going through the disease. But there is a population out there who needs support, like the caregivers. My mother, if she was alive, she would laugh. You probably would laugh because she would be joking around saying, "George, don't waste your time. Just spend time with your family." But I think there's different types of individuals. Some are more shy, some fight. So I decided to fight. I decided that there are a lot of people like myself who, felt alone, like we mentioned earlier. We even Adam's whole topic, on loneliness, and I decided to do, something about it. Again, it's not easy. I've actually had some odd responses, and all I wanted, and that's the big problem you mentioned. I'm not selling anything, so I've actually done walks and things where we'll donate $1,000 from my family to Parkinson's disease awareness. And so you'll see maybe a row of 30 organizations and medical and supplies, and I'm in the middle, but I'm the only one not, no offense, they're doing a good service, but I'm not selling anything. I just hand out bands for free. So some of the people initially look at me like I'm crazy because they're like, why are you here? Why are you volunteering? Why are you doing that if you don't want anything in return? After they get to know and they read my mother's story, they hug us, and some of them are crying, and it's touching because they appreciate, what we're doing. But it's just something that I feel in my heart I have to do. And like I said, I don't talk a lot about my private background, like work, because it doesn't apply. Because this is all about my mother. But I devote a lot of my life to help service the community and victims of crime. So I'm not a medical doctor. I always mention to everyone I'm a PhD. My dissertation, not to bore you, was 250 pages on aiding African American mothers who've lost their loved ones due to murder in West Palm Beach, Florida. So I think part of me has always had, care for victims of crime, but I feel like a lot of the Parkinson's individuals, caretakers, and people going through it feel like they could be possibly victims because they're often forgotten. Luckily, I was able to speak to the Michael J. Fox Foundation, who's leading the way to hopefully finding a cure one day, and they're actually put the first United States congressional bill through to Congress and the Senate, and through my House of Representatives. I was able to give a quick speech, and I had practiced it a few days with no problem. But when I actually got to do it, I fell apart. And it was the part where you probably read, where my mother's dream was always to sit in the backyard and watch her grandkids, grow up. But that was taken from us all. But even now, saying it is not easy. But again, you just have to remember the good times. I try not to share too many of the videos because I actually documented her last year of her life. I would never share it. I had it just more for medical if they ever needed it. But it's somebody who, again, Annie and Adam mentioned, somebody. My mother was really independent. She was divorced, but the only reason I am what I am today is because of my mother. She gave up her whole life to raise me and my brother, and she was very independent. So the last year it was very hard to see because she went from being this person who could drive, who could live in a house by herself, to someone who ended up kind of, every day just declining down to the wheelchair, and then, not being able to do anything. We had to have 24/7 care, which cost $12,000 a month. And that's just for caretakers because she needed someone around the clock. And luckily, we work hard so we could afford that. But that's another aspect for another day and another podcast, is the lack of financial support for people going through these, and not just this disease, but any of them. And again, just to finish up, Michael J. Fox Foundation has been a leader in the forefront to fight and end Parkinson's. And if you want to hear my 3-minute speech, it's on our togetherforsharon.com on the website. But it's, with people like that leading the way, I hope we can one day. The bill is called End Parkinson's Disease, and it's supposed to be to gain more funding, to gain more awareness, but at a national level, because there's nothing in the United States nationally for Parkinson's disease through political venues. I want this to be a little positive, so sorry.
No, wow. You fell apart during a speech about Parkinson's that took your mom. Of course. I mean, I don't know if it was because you were nervous or the emotions or the adrenaline was up to your hair follicles.
I don't want to brag, but I've spoke for 1,000. I have a big mouth. In my field, you have to.
Oh, go ahead, brag.
I always said once before we met, I could talk for 8 hours. You won't want me on your podcast.
And I volunteer. I don't know if filibusters still happen or if they've been outlawed, but I volunteer.
One thing I do find unique, and it's in any situation, but I've done, like I mentioned, 160 interviews, some of them more online, just because I've actually been reaching out to people around the world, and I can't really get the timing and the phone calls right for France, Spain, and Italy, but I've actually had interviews from incredible people fighting for awareness or with the disease in all over the world. But it's really amazing that you still, and I'm sure you've all dealt with it, but you still get like one for some reason, just doesn't appreciate, what you do. It's really that you can have 1,000 great ones. And I get like my heart so happy when I get one because I get to share their story. It's nothing to do with me, but I just want everyone to know that there are people, around the world, but you always get one that's just kind of negative and doesn't understand. And it's, of course, everybody responds differently to podcasts, to awareness, to anything, but why wouldn't I would love people to just work together. I think we're all a team. And if you don't have a team, then there's nothing. So even today at this podcast, I feel like, again, we'll all be family after this. And hopefully I can share all your stories and what you're doing. But I'll just always be baffled that you always have that one person that doesn't believe that what you're doing is I actually had someone think that I wasn't real. My mother didn't pass away. And I'm always going to be honest and tell the truth with everyone. So I share every story. But that was towards the beginning of that. And that was really heartbreaking. And again, you have to have two responses. You fight even harder, or you just kind of dwindle away and never do it again. So no matter what, I always say, if you see my post, that I'll fight till we have a cure, or I'll just continue to fight till I'm not able to anymore. Thanks again.
Wow. I had said at the beginning, did you come into what you're doing now? And the reason why you're on the screen right now, out of your own experience, Ani said it was frustration that the people were, I do this. It's like, well, you know what? This is life from now on. Everything that could be done has been done. And she's like, no, pain isn't something that you just need to shrug and put it on like a badge. And like, I'm a person in pain. It takes me away from situations. And I have been told nothing can be done. My reason for inviting people in, besides the fact that my husband, D. Scott Smith, motivational listener, said, "Oh, you want to do a seminar at a senior center? What you've experienced can go farther than that." My situation was being told by my neighbor, "You would be perfect as a hired caregiver," and I'm going, I don't really know what you mean by that. Like work in a hallway. And instead I was sent into homes where I was what I called the extra daughter-in-law you never knew you needed until now. And there was one time that I spent 1 hour with one person, and that was so that that person could tell the kids were in their 60s, I had someone there to make sure I didn't fall. In other situations, it was more hours or even years that I would come in the front door. I was asked questions by my clients, but especially their kids, again, in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Is there a better way? Is there something that we can use to help with? Do you know anyone who I'm just struggling with this, how I'm upset that they can't remember what I just said. I wish there was a support group that would allow me to go in with my person with dementia so that they are not frantic to find me because they've been ushered away to another room where everyone's wandering around waiting to be picked up again by their kids. All these questions, and I didn't have the answers, and I didn't know where to go for those answers. I didn't know the right questions to ask to find answers for the family members who cared about. In my situation, rarely I was sent to a 70-year-old, usually 80s, many 90-year-olds, and a few in their hundreds. And I was just like, wait a minute, there are resources. Someone ought to do something about this and put resources within reach of people. And this, asking several to come onto the screen, you end up asking each other questions, talking about things in a way that I can't, because you are an individual, you have unique experiences, and you also have these great expertise backgrounds that you can plug in. And I'm just thrilled when someone says to me, what was the name of your site? Because my friend is going through it with their loved one and sure wishes they knew something more. I love it. I can't wait for them to come and see. And I cannot believe someone said, yeah, I think you're just faking it. I don't think that really happened. I don't I have nothing to say
I don't like.
because I've been shoulder to shoulder with people who've had almost everything, and I just assisting or whatever. I was just like, how could people? Oh, they just don't know. They don't see it. They operate in a life where they just don't see people with these situations because they are private and they are very make you vulnerable and exposed, and
I just think if people, if people knew that people like all of us were out there to help them and care, it would change their attitude. It would help them with the information Adam was talking about. It would help with what Annie is saying. It would just change their world. But unfortunately, sometimes it's closed off and don't realize there are people out there that want to help them.
exactly.
I think that's just.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, George.
I mean, Parkinson's is still out there. There's no cure. We hope someday there will be, but I can get it tomorrow. I mean, and I don't want to wish it on anyone, but anyone can get it. So, and then mentally, I'm kind of preparing, for that because they don't think it's genetic. Could be environment. I feel it might have had even something, possibly environment. My mother lived in a home that was, nice, but a lot of those chemicals throughout 20, 30 years, bug spray and who knows, termite spray, you don't really know. So I'm not a scientist or researcher, but it is fascinating. But until we have a cure and understand, I also think myself and my family that they can also come down with it, and just something that's life.
I also think that what connects us all is we have to remember that 70% of our health is going to be determined by something other than our genes, going to the doctor and taking our medicines and using our devices correctly. It's these behaviors and environments that really determine how well we live and how long we live. And these are all connected. So being a caregiver is very stressful. It's isolating. When people are lonely, they don't eat properly, they don't exercise, they don't they don't take their medicines as corrected. And so I think they talk about value-based care all the time. And the more they talk about it, the more it seems we get stuck in the idea of fee-for-service care. But we have to start thinking more about our lives going forward holistically. So what do we do to sort of make our day-to-day lives better? Well, we can lean on each other. That can be hard, especially if you're a full-time caregiver for somebody with dementia or a significant disease like Parkinson's. But to the extent that we can eat a little bit better and help each other find a way to eat better, that we can think about not exercise, but movement. Like, how do we just move more? Do we dance? Do we do, I know in the Parkinson field, there's a lot of innovations that have been done around boxing and dancing, and but those are important for all of us to do. Like, find your thing. Don't think of it as exercise if that bothers you. Think of it as, I like to walk in nature. Think of it as, I like to go dancing. Think of it as, I like to have fun in the pool, whatever it is. That starts to improve the sort of factors that actually have a much bigger impact on the quality of your life and the length of your life. And take your medicines for sure. Go to the doctor for sure. There's nothing you can do right now about your genes, probably, although who knows in the future. But that's just not what's driving the wellness that we have, right? Like, yeah, there's going to be things, as you said, you can change your diet and impact at the epigenetic level. You can change sort of what genes get turned on and off, and lots of things we can. But if we worry about those day-to-day things that aren't in our control, those small changes that can have a profound impact on our wellness. And isn't that what we're all looking to be a little bit more well, to have a little bit sense of being taken care of feeling good in our own skin.
Auntie, what have you been thinking? I mean, you've been adjusting. I'm just like, he's talking genes.
I have all these thoughts, and Adam, yes, I have to agree on most of it, what you're saying. And George, when you said, with your mom, you don't know, is it genetic? Is it environmental? Is it, and I have to say all of it, all of the above, because genetically you could have specific, not one gene, but specific genes in a combination that will have higher impact of someone having a higher potential of getting Parkinson's disease. But knowing all that, at the same time, knowing your genetic makeup is how I can do what Adam was saying, better dietary choices, better lifestyle choices, even how your outlook to life. I always say, what's healthy lifestyle means to you. It's not about, I'm going to diet, I'm going to eat 100% everything organic, and I'm going to exercise 2 hours a day or whatever. But does daily choices that we make, should they become a habit, a lifestyle, not something I can do, suck it up, or use my willpower to do a week, a month, or 2 months? But let it become a lifestyle, because yes, if genetically I'm prone to certain things, but I can make lifestyle choices that those genes will never express themselves. So even if you have an uncle, a mother, or whatever that had Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or any other conditions, your genes are not your destiny. It just gives you an information, a foundation of what action steps you should take to have a better quality of life, or even maintain the quality of your life in your 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond. So it's the beauty of it. We have choices. So.
I'm going to say, and I hope I've got the correct last name, Sandra Strauss. She wrote A Toxic Brain. Her husband, a number of years back now, just completely changed. And so she became what Alipio de Vera, he calls himself because of his diabetes. She became also a citizen scientist, digging for answers, because the answer she was being given was not satisfactory. And when she applied what she was learning from other researchers and other thought leaders, it made a difference in who this man was, that was her husband, and his behavior, his ability to respond like he used to. And so that comes to mind, and what she discovered there. And she thanked me. She is, when you go to agingbetternetwork.com and you look at the live stream videos and scroll down, there's screenshot thumbnails there so that you can find Sandra and be able to listen to her. She thanked me because she said, I got so many people interested in having me come and talk, and they have their own audience. They got to hear, oh, there are options. There are other things that you're not just hoping for. They exist to know, toxicity. And then she realized she needed to have her brain checked in whatever ways that I can't even say correctly. Their two daughters, and the propensities were there, and they know what to do, what to avoid, what to make sure about, how to be checked, so that they don't have to go through what their mom did and what their dad did, of just not knowing. Another person that I love to bring out is another person who said, I wasn't going to do anything like this, but it had to be done. And so she is now on Hulu, and she's on other things. She is creating TV programs where people come and talk about those things that people ought to know about, or really need to know, that there are resources and supports and cures, and a place to go with the grief over those situations that impact everyone. I'm particularly looking at longevity, aging, and caregiving because I was one. But Tracy Lamb has worldwide caregiving, something like that. But anyway, Tracy Lamb, she's got, and it didn't come out of her because she wanted to be famous. It's just same frustration. It's like, people need to know that there is an invention that saves the caregiver, saves money, saves skin, saves from falls, saves a person from feeling isolated by their condition. So, having said that, I'm just going to dedicate the last few minutes to each one of you. We'll go in alphabetical order, which is Adam, Ani, George. If you could finish out your thoughts, and especially let us know where you can be reached, any link you want us to know about. We'll start with Adam and go to Ani.
Sure, I'll try and be brief. So you can find us at Klaatch, KLAATCH.com, and you can send me an email at adam@klaatch.com at any time. And what I'd like people to go away from this is to just be a little bit more aware, if you can, of thinking about what I said about behaviors. So maybe that person in your life, I always use the example of Home Alone. If you remember, there was the next door neighbor who was the mean, grumpy old man next door. But it turned out he wasn't mean and grumpy. He was only mean and grumpy because he was lonely. And when he reconnects at the end, he's the sweet, gentle old man. And that same transformation happens. We see it all the time. So try, when you see that behavior, to try and reach out, to be understanding, to try and make the person be seen and heard. And if you're interested in, at the community level, of knowing what you can do about it, certainly reach out to us.
That was adam@klaatch.com. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. So I'm not sure where the chat is going, and if people are seeing it, but that is my email, and you can see our company there. There's a video, if you see Learn More, that sort of explains what we do. I guess the last thing I said is for communities, like more than 10 people, we do a workshop that's free on the habits of loneliness, and we're happy to do that for anyone. Just reach out. It's for anyone who's in the, caregiving world. It's a fun, about an hour and 15 minutes on Zoom.
KLAATCH.
That's correct. Thanks, Christine.
Good. I was a third grade elementary teacher. So spelling lesson.
Teachers are the
Ani, you reached out to Adam today. So it's not just the person who is maybe objectively alone, likes to be alone, but there's deeper things, and it affects the ones who care about them. Maybe they're not even doing caregiving for them as far as assisting in activities of daily living, but the one who's caring about them and thinks, this could be better. Wellness could be notched up a bit here. Tell us about you, how to get a hold of you, anything you want us to know about.
Well, this was such an amazing, and I could just literally continue speaking with all of you. And George, just one quick thing I wanted to say. If you ever looked into low-level light therapy, there's so much amazing research is being done. It's also called photobiomodulation or cold laser therapy, which is used on the brain. And it's, look into it. Like, I absolutely love it, what it can do, the positive outcomes. It's fascinating. It's a lot of research being done in UK. So it's fantastic. But me, I would, like I said, helping people living pain-free, body pain-free is my passion. I can be reached at laststopforpain.com. And if anyone has any questions, ever wants to see if I can help them with any suggestions, maybe point them the right direction, I'll be happy to do so. Please just reach out on my website, laststopforpain.com, and you can connect with me through there.
I love it. Last stop, number 4, pain. Get off of my train. Woo-woo. Last stop for pain. And the hope that goes into people as they come in going, please let this be my last stop where I'm going to find some relief from suffering, from what it's causing elsewhere in my body, what it's doing to my social life, it's doing to those who care about me. 30 years you've been doing this. I love it. Thank you so much. You jumped in last moment. Totally. It was like, you're a natural at this. And thank you so much. George, I started with you. I was pursuing you many weeks ago. We were trying to figure out how we could pre-record this or something, because you've got a lot going on. And thank you so much for carving out this hour. You're not making money at this. Some people go, there's got to be an angle. You're doing this because you want... It's like, you know what? I want my mom back. I want her to be well and whole. I don't get that. And so all that energy has got to go somewhere for someone else. And 160 interviews later and counting, it is, bless your heart. Tell us anything else we should know about you and how to reach you. And I hear an ocean in the background. I think my husband's got the ocean sound going.
Yeah, it's perfect for Florida. It's okay.
Oh, very good.
I just want to thank you, Christine, and all the fellow speakers today, and your husband, of course, because I like how the thing's scrolling on the bottom. I need to look into doing this type of stuff, and I'll have to talk to you after. But this is I don't know if you can see the other side, but this is the Parkinson's tulip. And I wear it on my collar so you can see it, but I like to wear it on my heart because it means a lot to me. I only do this here today live or even some nights I don't sleep because I think about other people who are going through Parkinson's and the caregivers and my mother. But my goal now here moving forward is really just to share other people's stories. I even tell them, and I don't want anything back in return, so that's shocking, I guess. But it's I've only done this interview stuff for 2 months. I've had over 160 people respond, and it's not easy to put all together, but it makes me feel, it helps me cope too, knowing that there's other people out there that are also going through the same journey or similar, not the same. Everybody, the odd thing with Parkinson's, everybody's different. It's unique and tragic, but also it's just, that's the number one response. My last question when I ask interview is, do you have one thing or one phrase left for the Parkinson's community? And if I just put a book together of all those, it's really incredible and heartfelt. I'm actually decided on a last podcast, so I'm going to be writing a book as well. So I'll be joining you, Christine, but mine's going to take a long time, but it's going to be a journey of a son who lost a mother due to Parkinson's. And I haven't seen anything like that out there, even on Amazon. But I want to thank again everyone for letting me share my story and my mother's memory. And again, I'll be thinking of all of you. And it doesn't end just after we close this chat or this podcast, because after I have a recording, I'll be sharing it. You two, three will be famous, but I'll be sharing it with over 50,000 people for the rest of my life. And again, I don't want anything in return. I just want people to know that we're all out there and that there are people who love and care of them, even if we might be, or I might be a stranger, and that they always have a place to share their journey too. So thank you. Thanks, everybody. Nice meeting you.
George, where can people go to? Will they be hearing or seeing or reading these interviews?
Everything's on togetherforsharon.com, but I don't plug it a lot because, you'll see it on all my posts, but again, we're not really there for anything except to just share stories. But I've had no choice of now enter TikTok. I didn't want to, but we're on, I'm younger, so I'm good with the social media. We're on Twitter, which just changed its name. We're on Facebook, Instagram, everything, YouTube, but I've been hearing other types of areas that you all mentioned, and I'm trying not to get into any more, but we're out there. So, but everything's linked from www.togetherfor, it's F-O-R, Sharon.com. But if you're going to join me in this fight or advocacy of Parkinson's awareness, all I would probably ask is just a few minutes of your time, and I'll share your story with the world. That's it.
And I think I know why he put the ocean sound back on. It was to make me think, hey, I can really thank my husband for saying, honey, you should have a conference, which he literally did. And I am having a conference, which I call Convergence. You won't be able to read the rest of this, but it is called Convergence. It is going to happen right across the street and right down the street here in Independence, Oregon, October 6, 7, 8, 9. It is all about aging, caring, longevity. People are coming. Some people are coming from outside of Oregon. That is a place we've just started to put more information. We need to put more on. There's speakers, there's afternoon collaborations. It is convergence-experience.com. I call it a conference, but I'm making it into more of a multi-generational experience. In the mornings are the usual speakers that you would expect, but in the afternoons, it is open to the community. And we have an amazing community of Monmouth and Independence here that I'm pulling in junior high, middle school aged, kids, teachers. I'm pulling in the nursing students. I'm pulling in gerontology students. I'm pulling in persons of longevity that I meet when I'm walking the dog. Speaking of which, thank you, dog and cat. You did not come on screen with your barking or walking across my computer because I didn't put you in the back room today. I loved being with all of you. Thank you so much. And I'll just say goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Nice
Thank
meeting you.
It was
Nice to meet you all.
wonderful. Oh, I'm so
Bye-bye.
glad, Adam, that you made it in so we could hear about Clutch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank